Then and Now is made possible from sponsors like Nerds Resin and from viewers like you. Please support the channel. Previously on Then and Now. The original X-Men #1, which is retroactively named Uncanny X-Men, because hey, let's confuse people, sets up well despite some parts that have definitely not aged well, and the latest Uncanny X-Men, which mostly just set up for the revamp to the franchise now that Mouseful stopped forcing mutants to the back of the bus. This time on Then and Now, we cover the first adjectiveless X-Men according to Marvel proper from 1991, and the newest one from 2019, which will date this video when they launch another X-Men #1 in a couple of years, but hey, we are where we are. So, let's cue the opener and get right down to it. I went over a general title history in the Uncanny X-Men video, the last one of these I did, so yeah. Although I will tack on that the newest X-Men #1 comes after the truly interesting revitalization of the X-Men after Disney bought out Fox, meaning that they no longer could have an embargo on the X franchise, thanks in large part to Ike Perlmutter being extremely petty. It's also why the Inhumans were given a push that failed spectacularly, and why the Netflix shows went from being good to rushed out messes, although that was more over Ike's pettiness over the MCU and him not having control over that. Either way, last time we compared the Uncanny X-Men, which started the relaunch, which then grew into the Age of X-Men thing, which was basically the Age of Apocalypse, except not really. To me, it went by way too quick to really have a great impact, but I was proven wrong because the House of X and Power of X comics that came after were a tour de force, though that isn't exactly a high hurdle to jump. Now there will be some references to House of X and the events from there, but that's the problem with one continuous storyline, and I'll try to fill in what I can when I can, if it comes up. Cool? Cool. So, without further ado, let's go to the then. This book sold millions of copies. The Guinness Book of World Records say that it has officially sold 8.1 million copies. However, other sources have put it around 3 to 4 million. Is that really surprising though? Early 90s, the spec boom was in full swing, and this even had 4 covers that linked together to make a legitimately great update to the very first cover of the very first X-Men comic. The story, however, begins in space, where some people are being chased by some other people because that first group of people stole a spacecraft. However, they're not out just joyriding with a hijacked space plane thing. They're searching for Asteroid M, and yeah, they do actually find it. Magneto, however, is not one for guests, so he poofs their ship into pieces, and fun fact, he also can make a shield of oxygen around himself because magnets, yo. However, these people aren't run-of-the-mill space carjackers. Yeah, that's a thing. They're mutants who want to serve Magneto, even though he has been in self-exile for quite a while. They're there to beg him to not abandon his species. That incident in space, by the way, leads to the initiation of the Magneto Protocols. At least that's what's supposed to happen. However, Colonel Nick Fury speaks with the President, and he may have a better option. Cut to the X-Men, who are doing what the X-Men always do when we cut to them. They're training. Basic training is that Squad A, which consists of Rogue, Iceman, Archangel, and Colossus, have to capture Professor Xavier, who's back from his metaphorical walkabout. I did actually feel a little twinge in my heart when they were talking about the new X-Men and their death, although at this point I think X-Force had become a thing. I'll admit that I'm not exactly the most learned when it comes to Marvel during the 90s. Still, it works for me though. Anywho, Iceman is taken out by incendiary missiles, melting his slide. Rogue is able to get the missiles to chase her off, which then leaves a gap so that Archangel could throw Colossus through the mansion window. However, Colossus's organic steel form is no match for a quick psychic blast from Jean. Then we cut over to Squad Bravo, which consists of Wolverine, Psylocke, and Gambit, and they're walking through the sewers, or at least some form of drainage tunnel, when suddenly, robots attack. Because it's Marvel, everyone owns robot armies. Even the Danger Room proper would eventually become a robot. So Wolverine and Psylocke go after the robots while Gambit slips past, and reaches the room with Jean in it. He gets the jump on her, blasting her with one of his kinetically charged cards, but this is Gambit, so instead of just going, "Yeah, I won, mon cher," he decided to kiss Jean. But then she explodes. I have a joke about being a hell of a kisser, although Gambit does say that it is about dynamite redheads. While Cyclops, Jean, and Beast are making jokes and bantering, watching all this, Wolverine pops his claws through the floor right in front of Charles Xavier. Yes, like all of the 90s, Wolverine wins because he's Wolverine. So now training's over, and we get a final bit of Wolverine's broody and Sykes the leader before we actually hop into the plot of reintroducing the world to Magneto. First, we get Fury calling the X-Men to talk about Asteroid M being cloaked, but it is still up there. Then Cyclops makes a decision that'll change the team dynamic. Split the large single team into 2 separate teams. Yes, this will grow into the blue and gold team headed up by Cyclops and Storm respectively, but mainly we do focus on the blue team in this issue. Over on Asteroid M, we are actually given one of the best character pieces for Magneto. It begins with the people he brought into the asteroid fighting. The regular humans, also known as flat scans, and the muties are fighting, but the mutants have no powers, so the fight actually goes pretty negatively for the mutie scum. That is, until Magneto comes down sporting my favorite leisure wear. Yeah, while Mags may be as over the top as Dr. Doom, Magneto will always have the best Overlord line of clothing. But when one of the mutants gets gunned down, Magneto can no longer stay in exile. He no longer cannot have a cause. And so, with Fabian Cortez as the leader of his acolytes, he has terms for the people of Earth. Over with the X-Men, they're scrambling to get together because Xavier has detected Magneto's energy entering Earth's atmosphere, all thanks to the wonders of Cerebro. That's right, Cerebro, you can buy your own, and usually it won't work every 5 issues. In the mid-Atlantic, Magneto remembers the moment he truly became the monster of a man the world saw him as. Once he had given the world a true ultimatum. Give him total power and destroy all conventional and nuclear weaponry, or he will end all life on Earth. This was all seen in the epic X-Men number 150, and believe me, that is an issue everyone should have read by now. In that story, he sank a Russian nuclear sub to prove his point. But this time, he is actually bringing that sub, the Leningrad, from the depth for its nuclear payload. And that's when the X-Men arrive. Before I get into this, I just want to say that the exchange of Rogue doing her southern, "Oh, you don't call, you don't write? I was worried you've forgotten all about little old me," and Magneto just being like, "Hello, Rogue." Hashtag Magneto is the real Ice Queen. The reason I love this is because in Uncanny X-Men number 274, which came out 6 months or so before this, those two hooked up in the Savage Lands. I'll stop being a fan and get back to the plot. Mags is giving his usual, "I'm not the villain here," speech. Cyclops tries sneaking up on him with the Blackbird, which doesn't go well, and then the fighting actually begins. Beast gets tagged away easily, and Gambit's playing cards are magneted back towards him, taking him out. That is why you don't use the cool, wire-edged cards for exploding tricks, I guess. Psylocke gets a good blow-in, but Mags starts garroting her with a wire. And then Mags goes back into his cut it out line of defense, though Wolverine is definitely not having it. Oh, and then Cyclops blasts him through the hull of the submarine. Magneto finally comes face to face with a human soup that he had let die all those years ago. Now, when Magneto comes out of the sub, I truly wish I had this as a poster. Mags is done playing games and flying off with his nukes, and it just looks so damn good. However, Rogue then flies after him, doing her best to try and calm Mags down. And honestly, it actually looks like it's working until, well, Rogue gets a back full of high-yield thermonuclear device thanks to a fighter jet. But of course, the X-Men think that Magneto let loose one of his nukes in his rage. Later on Asteroid M, Magneto is sitting alone, contemplating all that has happened while bleeding from the chest. He's actually aghast that, well, yeah, Psyche has always been a dick to Mags because he was a part of Xavier's Faith Militant. Magneto and Wolverine had actually fought side by side together and gotten over a lot of the big hurdles when Mags was headmaster of the School for Gifted Youngsters. But his wound is pretty bad, so he lays back and rests. All the while, Fabian continues to speak about how Magneto needs not just be against humanity, but must again face the X-Men. Rogue, however, wakes up in Hammer Bay, the capital city of Genosha, where she's already being informed that there's a mutant terrorist cadre randomly bombing throughout the city, with innocent lives already lost. Luckily for her, though, at that moment, the Acolytes come in to try and recruit her. She gives that Southern Comfort haymaker as an answer, and even more luckily, that's when the other X-Men show up and they fight. That is, until Magneto comes in, laying out his "I'm so done with everyone right now" commandments. To close the issue, we also have Dr. Moira McTaggart crying that it is all her fault. This is legitimately Magneto's book through and through. That is why this book truly deserves the sales numbers it got. It isn't because of the X-Men stuff. That's almost bog standard, especially for Claremont's writing. Great character interaction and dynamics, a training exercise to get the who's who and the what they do in, but honestly, it's the character study that maybe only takes up 10 out of the 30 pages here that perfectly encompasses the basic history and all the characterization Magneto's developed over his time as a villain, an anti-hero, an anti-villain, and then an exiled man finally done with the world, only to be pulled back in. It is almost heartbreaking and truly a tragedy. And of course, Jim Lee's artwork, with Scott Williams on inks and Joe Rosas' colors, just punch this story up to a true 11. No, I'm not going to make 10 louder, it goes all the way to 11. Yes, that means that 2019 has big shoes to fill. Before I get to the story proper, there's something that's been niggling me about this cover. Why is Wolverine on it? Corsair is Scott's dad, Jean is Scott's husband, Vulcan and Havoc are his brothers, Prestige and Cable are his kids. The only thing I can think of is that the polyamorous relationship Hickman's been hinting at between Scott, Jean, and James, God, why they give me a name and backstory, Logan was such a cool name, what the hell, Howlett, is actually with Scott in the middle of the sandwich and not Jean. Hell, they'd actually have to be married for Wolverine to be on this cover, so it's actually a polygamous relationship. Mormons are mutants, confirmed. Except for Dust, she's still Muslim. Yes, that's a bad joke. The story actually cold opens with Cyclops getting his first pair of rose-tinted glasses, and also I think Professor X making a pass at him. Say, Scott, do you like gladiator movies? Then we get the basic summary of everything that's happened before this issue to set it up. Mutants now have an island nation called Krakoa. If you don't pronounce it Krakoa, that's fine, correct me in the comments below. Although it does say that it is the first island nation, but this is like their third island nation that mutants have had. The first two being Genosha and Utopia. I do count Utopia because Cyclops did claim sovereignty. Now, I'm not even going to point out that San Francisco and New York once had mutant-specific blocks, kinda like Little Italy or Chinatown. But yeah, they do have their own nation now, which always works out for them, right? And the X-Men are doing things to protect mutant kinds, as they usually are. Finally, the story proper actually happens. Storm and Cyclops are clearing out the last Orchis compound on Earth. Orchis is basically a group of former every Marvel acronym group ever who are working to prevent the doomsday scenario that mutants bring. To try and sum that whole thing up quickly. Side note, it's actually very interesting to see how times have changed because Storm is actually sounding more like she's paraphrasing Magneto's sentiments from the 91 X-Men #1. However, there's more than just soldiers at this base, as they all fall back to defend something, and not just scatter so they don't die. So Psyche calls in Magneto and Polaris, who's back to being officially Magneto's daughter, in for air support. Good thing too, because that's when the scientist apes attack. God, comics are amazing to explain sometimes. While Magneto decides to be the one to face off against the Doctors playing Grodd, Psyche, Storm, and Polaris find the stasis tubes that they were apparently searching for. Cyclops and Polaris start freeing those inside, while Storm pulls out a flower, plants it, and then waters it to open up a portal to Krakoa. Yes, it's a tad too makes it easy for my liking, but c'est la vie. While opening the tubes, one seems to be different, so they open it to reveal Negative Girl. Everything I've seen has actually said that this is Serafina, who is a member of the Children of the Vault, but apparently they decided to reverse her color scheme permanently here. However, she also no longer has her power of mind control, so I don't know. She's weak and babbling about the wild gods loose on Earth. Granted, Magneto, being the most modest mutant, says the only gods on Earth are the ones in that room. Vintage Magneto right there. I do actually really like so far is that if that is Serafina, and they use the term post-human, we've actually got a couple Mike Carey references that you generally don't see. No, Mike Carey is no relation to me, of course. So Serafina poofs off without warning, which also adds new power if it is actually Serafina, but instead of chasing after her, Cyclops makes it a priority to get the rest of the mutant kids home. Where's home? Well, that would be Mutant Fire Island itself, Krakoa, the living island. Here's where it gets a bit hard to summarize because really going forward, you get a lot of character interactions, which, of course, is great. The new mutants who came in are being checked out by the longtime ex-doctor Cecilia Reyes. Storm sticks around and Psyche makes sure she's alright. Magneto, however, is given the hero's welcome, as everyone praises and worships him, but not necessarily in that we're not worthy way, but rather in that hail the conquering hero sense. Meanwhile, Psyche decides to head home, oh don't worry, we'll get to that, while talking to Polaris about how he felt about his son being born originally, and how now he's proud of the world he's in. Which, I'm not even going to touch that big can of worms. Then he goes home, to the blue area of the moon, where the summer house resides. We get Corsair, Psyche's dad, and Psyche talking as they head to dinner. Here's where we learn that basically the Krakoa habitats, like the summer house, can be grown anywhere, so there's nothing holding back the mutant race anymore. Wow, I'm really glad that Hickman has decided to take the mutant race in a new direction. With Orcus being basically the last bastion of hate we're seeing, now mutants can literally go anywhere in the known universe and have a free house and food to go with it. Meanwhile, Vulcan, no, I'm not going to call him Gabriel, he's Vulcan and I hate him, is cooking steaks for dinner, and Wolverine is being picky about his meat. Giggity. Nathan wants to trade guns with Raza, Jean and Sha'ad are setting the table for dinner, Hepzibah is trying to nail yet another Summers, this time it's Rachel. More plot relevant, I doubt it, but I hope, is that Havoc and Psyche give their dad the gift of a Krakoa flower so he can make a portal from his ship's Arboreum to Krakoa and the summer house. Then we cut to after dinner with Cyclops doing dishes by spraying them down with bacteria-eating goo. Wonderful. But of course, it's another feel-good moment about how the world is totes better now between Corsair and Psyche. Oh, and throughout the story, we've been cutting to the Orcus Forge, which basically is just amounting to, we can bring back Master Mold. Hopefully that makes things more interesting next issue. What is there honestly to say about this? The majority of this issue is really building up the "we are in paradise" angle almost way too much for it not to come off like someone saying, yeah, just one more day until retirement and then we can live happily ever after. That isn't to say that this is a bad issue, but with how many different ways Psyche is saying, I'm so happy now, just drops the overall feel of the comic for me. This works as a better epilogue for the Hox Pox story than a real first step into the Dawn of X. At least Magneto gets to prove that he was right this entire time. That really feels odd to say. Both of these issues are the first steps of new adventures for the X-Men, but I'm going to have to say that the one that sold at least 3 million issues is the better one here, and I know that may be controversial to say. The X-Men part of the 1991 version was good, not great, that is true, but that's because it was a quick reintroduction to the team before going into the real meat of the story, which was Magneto's turn back to air-quote villainy and how that recidivism could happen. It's a brilliant character study and a great character moment, and that's why it is a top-tier book. The 2019 one, however, and I know this is going against literally what everyone online, both mainstream and individuals, have said, maybe we want this to be better than it actually is. It's neat to see Cyclops getting his glasses, and I absolutely love the writing between Psyche and Storm throughout the opening operation. Again, even if Storm's sentiments definitely do seem to go, God, I hate flat scans, that's all well, and again, the character interaction is entertaining, but it's just, okay, I can't hide it anymore. This is a very Inhumans book. It's good Inhumans, mind you, but it still doesn't feel like an X-Men book. The new kids were found in stasis pods that look very much like the whole cocoons that the Inhumans are birthed from. Scott is living on the blue area of the moon, and even his color scheme is reflective of Black Bolt. There's now the Quiet Council leading them, and frankly, there's not even the tiniest threat felt on Krakoa or any mutant's life. They can travel throughout the cosmos now without worry, though I am looking forward to the New Mutants comic, and Cyclops seems to actually be the tool that general audiences saw him as. Again, this does not mean that it is a bad comic in any way. It is still a very entertaining and a fun read to read. But it does mean that when in direct comparison, the fluff and faffing about to set up the royalty that is the Summers family makes this a weak comic. Yes, that could be because Claremont was near the end of his massive tenure as writer on the X-Men, so it's not hard for him to use the history that he actually wrote to the best of its ability. Then again, maybe the truth is that I'm too set in my ways to like what the kids these days are into. And on that bombshell, that's all for this video. It's a pretty divisive ending, so let me know how wrong I am in the comments below. While you're down there, let me know what issues you'd like to see on the next Then and Now, or any of the other shows that we have on this channel. We just restarted our Facebook page, which has panels, reviews, and generally other stuff that won't fit on my Twitter. Oh, and we also have a Twitter, so go and like and follow all that. We also have a Patreon and a direct donation with pricing down in the description, along with links to everything I just mentioned. Please like, subscribe, and share to show that YouTube, we exist. More than any of that, though, I'm AJ Carey, the Comic Archivist, and stay golden, Inklings.